Hello, happy full moon. Um, yeah, I'm gonna try this out and see how it goes with adding a little bit of video content to these newsletters. I'll always have writing involved. I love writing. I love reading. I love the what happens internally when we read and what happens to me when I write. It's such a powerful process. But my deepest intention with these newsletters, with this, is to be an offering of service. On the one hand, to have something that allows me to stay in connection with you. At this point now of teaching in Bali now for almost 6 years, and then teaching in Canada and worldwide for almost like 15 years. That is just like, yeah, super important that I have a way of staying in connection with people. And then also, as I go deeper into my work, and I have offerings like retreats and mentorships and like sessions and courses and trainings and retreats and all these sorts of things, which are paid, and necessarily so. Like, it's what allows me to sustain my life and to continue to grow and evolve. But at the same time, like, my deepest intention with my path in my life is to be in service to life and to others and to the world, and finding the balance between wanting to give and be in service to those that might not be able to afford, things, while also being able to, like, sustain myself. It's like a dance that I've struggled with a little bit, of finding that right way. And so for me, part of my intention for these newsletters is to, like, for it to be truly an offering. Um, that twice a month, on every new moon and full moon, I can create something that might help people, give them the boost of inspiration that they might need as they navigate life, or, help them in their path in their spiritual practice, or, you know, however it ends up coming through. I'm still in the process of figuring it out. So bear with me as we go through this journey together. Um, Feedback is always welcome. I always also like to have like connections with you, so I'm not just like, I'm staring at myself right now with this aurora borealis kind of dancing behind me, and matches my dress, which is nice. Um, but it's also nice to know that I'm not just talking to myself. So please feel free to, like, connect with me and all of that sort of stuff. Okay. So in this full moon, on the one hand, it's a really, in the Indian tradition, it's a really powerful full moon. It's Guru Purnima, which I will speak about in the writing. So I'll pause for that for now, just to keep this video a little bit more succinct and not just like, talking and talking and talking, and keep more of I pulled some tarot cards for this full moon. Also, and in the Western tradition, this is a full moon in Capricorn. And one way that I understand Capricorn is like, they were born to be an ancestor. They really embody that quality, that for those that have really heavy like Capricorn in their chart, not just sun, but like, just other aspects that are really like strong in Capricorn. They're I find there are people who, like, as they age and as they get older, they become like more themselves, that they grow in their power, like a fine wine, like an aged whiskey. Um, and Capricorn also, there's like the shadow pieces of Capricorn, of course, and then there's the like pop culture understanding of Capricorn being like the workaholic and the CEO and all of that sort of stuff. But I also think of Capricorn seeing just beyond themselves, that Capricorn has this capacity to understand that, like, that they love their builders and they love to create, but not just for themselves. They like to create on behalf of, like, their family, the world. They're able to extend beyond themselves. But then Capricorn doesn't dismiss themselves in that process like some other signs might do, that they're not so self-sacrificing, that they recognize that being in their own power and being in their own selves is essential for them to be able to actually be in service to others. And to build beyond themselves means that they have to build themselves first. So it's kind of with this in mind that I have these cards that I pulled. And so I pulled 3 cards, and each card has a different meaning. The first card is like, what is one action that each of us can take that will benefit our own lives? So starting with our own self, like, getting connected with our own inner being, being in service to our own path, our own life, and figuring that out first. It's important. The second card is like, what is one action that we can take that will benefit our community or our family? And then the third card is, what is one action that we can take that will be of benefit to humanity or the world at large? And it's funny, as I pulled the cards, each of the cards ended up being a swords card. And swords are the element of air. And just really quickly, every time I see lots of swords, I always think like swords usually have to do with issues of the mind or the intellect or logic or reason or truth. So those are issues of the element of air and the suit of swords. But it's also challenge and difficulty. And so I'm going to just go through the cards really quickly, uh, and then I'm going to unpack them each individually. And don't get scared. Some of the cards, swords are, it's kind of like the suit that, when people see a lot of swords come up, they're like, ooh, but there is, when we're going through when we're going through a hard time in our life and we have all like the really light, bright, beautiful cards, then it might feel good in the moment to see them, to be like, oh, I'm gonna be okay, hallelujah. But but it might not actually help us, you know? That sometimes hard cards, they might be things that we have an initial reaction to, like, oh no. But when we go into the meaning of the card, it can be a teacher, and that teacher can actually help us move through what we need to move through in our life so we can like alleviate suffering, or we can become more compassionate, more wise, or we can evolve and grow. And this is essential. So it's like, yeah, so don't get scared. So for the first question of what can we do, what is one action that we can take that will help our own lives individually? The card that I pulled for that is the Nine of Swords. Kind of a scary looking card, I know, but don't worry, we'll unpack it in a moment. The card for what is one action that we can take that will benefit like our family and our community. So our immediate, interconnectivity, our immediate web that we have our energetic feelers into. The Three of Swords. Again, kind of a ouchy looking card, yeah? And then finally, what is one action that we can take individually that will help the world or humanity at large? And the card for that is the Page of Swords. And yeah, I think the only last little astrological thing I'll mention that I found it really interesting that it's all swords that came up is that we just went through a transit where Uranus transited into the sign of Gemini. Gemini being the one of the signs of the element of air, really to do with the intellect and again mind, reason, understanding, curiosity, and Uranus being the planet of like abrupt change and chaos, the wild card, the change maker. Uranus inherently, like you never can really know what's going to happen when there's something going on with Uranus. Like it's always like if you think then you're really, really wrong. Uranus is always like, you have to embrace the unknown. And knowing that the moment you try to pin it down, it's going to revolt against you, a little bit of a trickster energy to that. Yeah. So interesting that Uranus just transited into Gemini. So this change maker, this, a wild card, this abrupt, chaotic energy. That's neither good nor bad. You can't say it's like a malefic or a benefic. It's like kind of one of those teachers that can be both. They're either, they're neither. It's all, entering the sign of the mind and the intellect, and how in this spread really talking about and really having the intention of like, what does it mean to be an ancestor? What does it mean to be an ancestor within my own life, for the people in my life, for the world at large? And then these like swords coming through and Uranus coming into Gemini, it's just like, well, we have to look at the issues of the mind and looking at the challenges that are like really presenting themselves to us so that we can actually like not with like love and light, spiritual bypassy, let's just make everything good, but like let's actually truly face it and move through it, and that there's a power in that. Okay, so the action that we can take to benefit our own lives is the Nine of Swords. And the Nine of Swords, it's like one of the like it's one really quick word for that card is like the nightmare card. It is the card that of like the stories and the mental constructs and the worries and the whispers in our ears in the middle of the night that keep us up and torment us, you know? And we've all gone through that, yeah? Where like you're up really late, like till 3 or 4 in the morning, ruminating and worrying and all these things, come up. And we come and then all of a sudden we finally managed to get a couple hours sleep, hopefully. We wake up in the morning and everything feels different. It's not like, and you even try to talk about like to your friends or the people in your life, like all the things that you were worrying about. And like the moment you try to speak it, it almost like you're like, oh, that was so silly. Why did I like worry about that so much? That's kind of there in the Nine of Swords. But the thing about the like the mind and, in yoga, we have this term in the Indian cosmology, we have this term called Vilkalpa, which means mental construct. And the key to understand is that all things of the mind are a construct, like our minds construct reality, that create a perceptive view that we view life through. So through our past experiences, through our inherited beliefs, through the things that we are fed from our social media, through like our culture, from our family, it creates a construct of reality that allows us to interface with it. And it's not wrong or bad, it just is that our minds create a version of reality that we then respond to. And then that response creates a necessary response. And this is kind of like where we start to get into understanding the effects of things like of karma, of what are called samskaras, the habit patterns of the mind that keep us stuck in and cycles of suffering. And then karma is not like the Christian understanding of like I do this thing and then something will happen to me in exact return. It's not like a tit for tat. Karma is this understanding that every action that we take will weave us into the fabric of life and will ultimately change the fabric of life and come around and affect us. To unpack that even more would take a bit more time, but yeah, so I'll kind of leave it at there. So going back to this Nine of Swords, of these stories that we create, the constructs of the mind that create the way that we interface with life can actually start to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. That because we view life in a certain way, because the stories that we've created, it means that we respond to life in a certain way, and then life responds back to us in same, and then it creates truth, not because it's inherently true beyond the mind or beyond the construct, because you've made it so through belief and through story. And so part of the work of like deep spiritual practice of sadhana, of yoga, is to start to uncover your vikalpas, to understand like the mental constructs that keep you stuck in states of suffering. And one of my teachers says you don't go from being completely and utterly asleep and stuck in like vilkalpas of like bondage and suffering and all of that to being fully awakened in like one fell swoop. That actually the work is that we slowly dismantle the constructs of the mind until we get closer and closer to what he calls a heuristic truth. Meaning it's not the ultimate truth yet, but we're starting to get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to it. And, we all have had those moments, right? Where we look at life and we're like, that things that you thought were true, over time you realize that they're only partially true or kind of true, or things that are like multiple things can be true simultaneously. So it allows us to, and eventually when you go through that enough times, we start to recognize that, that my version of reality, how I'm seeing reality right now, isn't inherently true beyond my own perception. But because of my perception, I have to respond to life in that way, into the way, like I still have to respond to life, and I could only respond to life based on the perception that I have available to me. Um, um, but I can do so by slowly allowing like the little tendrils of my mind to start to like question and to dissolve, to like from a construct to a deconstruct. All right, so that was really philosophical, so apologize for that. But it's the Nine of Swords really invites you to like ask questions like what are the stories that you tell yourself that keep you stuck in states of suffering? and that torment you, and doing some work to start to dismantle that. The Nine of Swords invites you to view that not like the way you're viewing things right now is actually made up in your head, and almost everything is, um, and that you have a choice of whether like you believe the stories, or whether you start to choose to allow the mind to open itself to receive different kinds of understanding, different kinds of insights. This is a process of like, for lack of a better word, this word is kind of thrown around a lot in spiritual communities, but this is a process of awakening. And that awakening isn't a moment in time. It's not an experience. Awakening is a process. It's also a state of being. And so it's one that we can slowly, go closer and closer and closer to. So the Nine of Swords, last thing I'll say about this is just this real invitation to like look at the stories, the beliefs, the constructs, the mental stories that keep you in states of suffering, to recognize that you are not seeing reality in its absolute, no matter how awake you think you are, no matter how many times you've like had moments of profound insight, that there's always deeper to go. Like awakening is a never-ending process. You can go like the kaleidoscope into God is infinite. The kaleidoscope, the sanctums into the temple of the Most High is never-ending. And so we always begin with like the way that I'm perceiving reality is a construct, and I can allow the edges of it to fray so I can go deeper and deeper into truth. So can you look at the stories that keep you in suffering and start to do the work to dismantle that? It's one of the biggest services that you can do for yourself and your own life. That life isn't as XYZ as you think it is. You are not as XYZ as you think you are. Others are not as XYZ as you think that they are. So start to do that work. Okay, so what is one action that we can each take that will help our family and our community? We have the Three of Swords, you know. This is interesting. So threes, like there's like the element of the suit, and then there's the numerology of the suit and how they interface is kind of like the one of the doorways into starting to understand like the meanings of the cards. And like the Three of Swords for me is or the Three of Swords. So threes, I see it as like braiding energy. It's actually very creative energy. But creative energy, you look at that, does that look creative? No, it looks really destructive. And this is like, here, I'm actually going to quote something from one of my favorite tarot books. Bum, ba, dum, bum, just to kind of like get this meaning kind of pulled through a little bit more. Bum, bum, bum. Dun, dun, dun. Where are you? I should have had this open, but here we go. Oh, no, no. Come on. Come on. Mm -hmm. Okay. So threes, creative expression, are the first essentially active cards, but their active nature is twofold: toward life and death, toward reproduction, construction, and the euphoria of being, or towards destruction, depression, and the implacable transformation that demands the elimination of the old. The vital aspect of the threes achieves transformation by the birth of the new. So says Alejandro Jodorowsky in his book, The Way of Tarot, one of my favorite books of tarot. He's fantastic. But the idea here is like when the Three of Swords comes up, it's this invitation to like, I always think of there's a Sufi prayer. So Sufism is like the mystic form of Islam, very beautiful religion, powerful religion. You like Rumi, you've all probably read Rumi quotes. He's a Sufi poet. Same with Kabir, Sufi poet. But there's this Sufi prayer that says, "May my heart be so broken, so shattered, that only God, only the divine, only the infinite, only the eternal, only Great Spirit can put it back together again." And I always think of that when it comes to this Three of Swords, of like, instead of seeing grief and heartbreak and challenge and all the things that come through when our hearts ache as like this thing that needs to be avoided or diminished or fixed, but rather that we enter that heart. We enter the heart of the anguish of reality of like the um you know the grief of being a human, and we allow that to break our hearts open and transform us. That actually that pain can alchemize us. That pain, that the creative capacity is like when we, and I know you've gone through this. We all have. When we've gone through heartbreak so profound that it shatters us and it changes us. And, when we come out the other side, however long it takes, like there is this capacity, there's potential for us to be more loving and compassionate, for us to be able to move through life actually more soft and more graceful. The Three of Swords, when we recognize, like when we lose someone that we love, we can either harden ourselves, embrace against loving others and bracing against loving ourselves or keeping our hearts really closed. Or when we lose someone that we love, it can be an invitation to actually allow more love in because we understand the profundity and the preciousness and the like, I'm going to say rareness, but like love is like, I feel like this is the fundamental aspect of why we're alive, is to experience that, not just romantic love, but love like of love itself. So I don't want to say it's rare, but it's definitely precious and something to be held with such tenderness and such reverence. And the Three of Swords invites you into that, to like, look at the grief and the heartbreak of what's happening in our community, and to not turn a blind eye to it, to not harden ourselves, but then to also not, like, the other worry of the Three of Swords is that it like like it can get distorted, or like that creative capacity turns like against us, where like we create entire identities with our pain, or with the pain of our family, or the pain of our community. And it's more of like, you know can we use the creative power of the three and move into the heart of what's alive in our family and a community, even the more difficult parts, and allow that creative burst of the breaking open of the heart to bring us deeper into, again, compassion and love and wisdom and understanding and softness and gentleness and kindness, and all of that comes on the other side. But also when we like the Three of Swords can also ignite us to like to make change, you know, to when we look at the plight of others and actually face it instead of turning our faces against it, we are more likely to like actually take actions of compassion for others, when we're able to like change how we like um walk on this earth, that we're more likely to, like if this was in the card, like, so I was going to go on a little bit of a digression there, but it invites us to like take action, and to evolve and change. So again, these two cards are not like the light and fluffy cards, but when we're facing the reality of these times, of what's happening in our own lives and our families and for others, it can be a really powerful and important like teachings to actually work with, to work on within ourselves. Okay, now we get to the last card. We have the Page of Swords. So what action can we take that will benefit like the world or humanity at large, And, pages, I see them as like they're either messengers or they're students. They're very like also very creative energy, and they're like a yes. Pages are like saying a yes to life. But again, swords are the energy of difficulty and challenge. But the Page of Swords doesn't like get bogged down by it. The Page of Swords is able to like look at the challenges and the difficulties of life and face it, but have this element of like playful excitement around it, and that can go shadowy, where you kind of dismiss the gravity of the times. But there's also like a really beautiful teaching in that we can choose to look at what's happening in life and in the world with a heavy heart, with a like I have to battle against life with this warrior, like a hardened warrior. Or you can see it as like I have an opportunity to make a difference in the world in the way that I can, and I'm choosing to face life with as much joy and playfulness as I possibly can muster within me. That actually my biggest service that I can have in this world is to maintain a level of levity, even though I'm dancing with difficulty and the challenges that this world is facing right now. So it's like this finding a balance between facing with truth and with eyes wide open, like what is happening in our politics, what is happening environmentally, what is happening in our culture, what is happening in the world. Like face it with eyes wide open. Not spiritually bypassing, not trying to make everything love and light. Everything's gonna be okay. Like, no, it's facing it with truth, but without getting so like, because it's also really easy to look at what's happening in the world and to get like overwhelmed and to not know how to take action because it feels so like massive to address it that we like shut down, you know? But if we have this level of like, I think of the Page of Swords, I think of like playfulness and curiosity and ingenuity and being able to use the mind to find new and inventive ways to approach difficulties. That the challenges become like an obstacle course where there's this element of like childlike zest for moving towards life. And the key is to not like take it so far that you minimize the profundity of life where it just becomes like frivolous. The Page of Swords, like instead, this card is inviting us to like invite that childlike sense of love of life, of zest for life, of curiosity of life, move towards it, and with eyes wide open. And that this could be a very powerful way that we can actually find ways of making a difference in a real way. And that's like really awesome. Okay. I have no idea how long this video is. It might be like a million. I haven't been paying attention to the clock or anything like that. Um, I hope that this was helpful for you. Let me know. I'm also going to offer, I have a course on tarot that I have created with where we go deeper into the cards to really understand them. I'm going to offer like a flash sale, so it's 50% off. I'll have more details of that in the writing. And yeah, if you ever need support or want some one-on-one sessions, I'm here. I do offer a sliding scale and all that sort of stuff, but you can reach out to me if you want a reading or just want to actually talk and have some insight into life. I do a lot of like counseling work and mentorship work. It's been a big part of my work in the world the last I would say actually 10 years. And going into that more and more and more and more. So sending you all a lot of love. Hope you're awesome. Okay, bye.